From the News Channel 5 Network, this is SportsLine.
Hey there, SportsLine on your television. Steve Layman here with you. Glad you are here with us on News Channel 5. Plus, last week leaked out that the Nashville Predators are in the process of being sold, at least the majority stake of the team, to former Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam. And then on Thursday, we were able to hear that from his lips and Chairman Herb Fritch and get the full details of what this deal is going to look like and start to get the pieces of what that might mean for the Predators moving forward. Here's the bottom line. Starting this fall, the former governor is going to start buying units of the team, most of them from Fritch himself, some maybe from other owners as well. Those other owners aren't pulling out completely. Fritch isn't pulling out completely. They're still going to be around, those 17 current members, at least according to the initial plans. But Haslam's going to continue to buy shares, in essence, of the team, units of the team, for 3 years until he becomes the majority owner, at which point you figure he will take over the chairman role that Fritch has held for the last several years, and it will be his team to run. I don't anticipate there will be massive changes there. This ownership group has done a ton of great things. As we heard David Poyle say last night on the program, in running down where the franchise is right now, the Nashville Predators are probably not the Nashville Predators if it's not for this ownership group. Because remember, back in 2007, everybody thought they were leaving, that this was a failed experiment in Nashville, and that the ownership wasn't solid and the team didn't have strong footing, and that this team was likely headed to somewhere in Ontario or something like that. Well, the ownership group stepped up and kept the team here. And since then, over the last 15 years, it has grown and grown and grown. It has become a consistent playoff contender here in Nashville. A team that's gone to the playoffs 8 consecutive years. And they've really put themselves on the map in terms of how they do the game day atmosphere and everything that comes with that. And that ownership group deserves a ton of credit there. So I don't think this is one of those things where you come in and you throw out everything and you scrap it and you move forward. I don't think that's what this is. But the thing I do think is important to realize here is, as good as the Predators have been overall during that time, over the last 4 years or so, there is a perception out there amongst the fans that this team has really slid back. It's 4 consecutive years of losing in the first round of the playoffs. They just got swept by the Avalanche. Now, the Avalanche only lost 4 total playoff games on the way to winning the Stanley Cup, so that's not exactly criminal. But there's a ways to go. If the ultimate goal is to win the Stanley Cup, and Governor Haslam told us on Thursday that it is, if that's the case, you got to be better. You got to be much, 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 much better. And I think the Predators understand that, and their fans understand that as well. And that was the big thing I kept hearing towards the end of the season, with the obvious disappointment of being swept in the playoffs and losing in the playoffs in the first round for the 4th consecutive year. There were several fans that said, okay, we need to know about the direction of this team, because at the moment it seems like we're floundering, where you're not truly competing to win the Stanley Cup because you're nowhere close to Colorado right now. But you're also not falling all the way back where you're truly admitting that it's time for a rebuild, and maybe you get a number 1 draft pick or a top 5 draft pick. When you look at that Avalanche team, by the way, that's what they did. They stunk for multiple years. But you know what they got out of it? They got guys named McKinnon and Landeskog and Rantanen and Makar. They got a bunch of top 10 picks. One guy who was a number 1 pick. And that's how they've built a team that now is the best team in hockey. They did it largely by homegrown draft picks that were high picks when they weren't any good. They've had some really nice free agent signings, fit some other guys in there, nice pieces. But the core of that team was drafted by Colorado, and they were drafted high. They were drafted with picks that were earned by being bad. And that's something the Predators have just not wanted to do. They have not taken that step back. They continue to try to fight to get to the playoffs each year, to give themselves a chance to get on a run and make it special like it was in 2017. That's a philosophy that has them where they are right now. And it's interesting, and you'll hear it tonight, because we're going to hear from both former Governor Bill Haslam, who's going to be the majority owner, and the current chairman, Herb Fritch. A little different philosophy, I think, when you hear from the two of them. Both guys who love the team, both guys who want full success, but a little bit different philosophy, or maybe patience, when it comes to this. Because a lot of Preds fans wanted to hear from ownership, but this ownership group, as it currently stands, has let the hockey folks do all the talking. David Poile has been the mouthpiece for this team for 25 years. Sean Henry has been the business mouthpiece for the Predators since he has been here. And those guys do wonderful work with their jobs. They've been great for the community. But at some point, I think it's a fair point to make that you want to hear from the people who are legitimately writing and cashing the checks about how they feel the direction of the franchise is right now. Is it going in the direction they want it to be? Is it not where they want it to be? What's that look like? And our media availability last week was really the first time we've heard from the Predators in that vein in a long time. I think Haslam, a guy whose entire career has been out in front, politician, the business world, all of that stuff, he's had to stand in front of the cameras and answer questions, sometimes difficult questions, and point to the success or what needs to happen to reach that success. I think he can be very valuable in that role, and I think Predators fans should take heart in that they've got a guy who's connected to the team in that way who wants to step forward and do that. And it's a little bit different, and you'll hear it. Herb Fritch, much more of a patient guy who looks at the team. I'm sorry. Maybe impatience is the better way to put it. A guy who looks at the team and says, we can't afford to go backwards. We got to continue to fight to push forward from where we are right now. Maybe it's time. Maybe it is time for that rebuild. Will that happen? We don't know yet. But I think more than anything, you will have a better line of communication to ownership. Not that he's going to be Jerry Jones and stand out there all the time telling you what he thinks after every game, like game 37 of the season, tell you what's going on. But I think you're going to have a better feel, better pulse on the franchise from the ownership. Because I think when he has to speak or feels that the fans want him to speak, I think Bill Haslam's going to provide that. And I think that's good. For Preds fans who haven't had much to complain about over the last 15 years with this ownership group, I think there are some questions right now, and rightfully so. Where do they think this team stands right now? Where do they want to go? How quickly do they expect to get there? What's the future with David Poile? All those things are fair questions, and we haven't always gotten the answers. And my hope is this move to Bill Haslam over the next few years will bring more of those answers to us. On Thursday of last week, we finally got some of those answers, and we want to give some of those to you here tonight. And let's start with the former governor himself, Bill Haslam, talking about what will be the start of a purchase this fall and over the next 3 years to make him the majority owner of the Nashville Predators.
I'll make a quick comment, and then you're welcome to ask whatever you like. I'm really excited to be joining the Predators ownership group. 3 reasons. One, I'm, like a lot of you, a sports fan. I love it. I've loved it since I've been little. Number 2, really bullish on Nashville and its future. I think the trajectory we've been on is not going to stop, and I think that adds to the whole Predators experience. And the 3rd is I love the way the Predators have interwoven themselves into the fabric of this community. To me, it's kind of a model for what a team has done in embracing the community and the community embracing them back. So I feel like I'm kind of privileged to walk into a situation where some people came before me to make certain the team stayed here. They did an incredible job. And we have a team that's been competitive on the ice. We want to make certain it not only stays there, but continues to play at a different level. And again, I feel kind of privileged to be able to walk into the situation.
How long was it in the works?
Herb reached out about 6 months ago and asked if I'd be interested, and I was a pretty quick and easy yes. that I would be interested again for the reasons I said.
What do you hope to bring to the team?
I think a couple things. I mean, it's, having been in a public role before, I think is helpful. Number one, you're used to being shot at in public. That doesn't, it's, you grow that. But number two, I think in my role as governor, you're kind of the chief economic salesman for the state, if you will, and you realize how critical Nashville is to Tennessee's overall energy and draw. And again, the Preds are a big piece of that. So I think I have the advantage of kind of having flown at 30,000 feet, if you will, and it gives you an appreciation for what's happening on the ground here, which is pretty special.
One of the things we heard a lot at the end of the season was a desire from fans to hear from ownership about the direction. How much is that part of what you're wanting to do, and why they wanted to bring you in to be that kind of front-facing person?
Remember, this is a phased transaction, so we're gonna have the initial closing sometime this fall. I should say we have nothing signed. This kind of leaked out of the NHL offices a little earlier than we meant. But I'll buy the first piece this year, and then 3 years from now we'll complete that. I think it was, and I'll let Herb speak for himself. I think it was more about wanting to have somebody who was local, not because there was any great threat the team was going to move, but just there's an advantage to having people that love the Preds that live here and go to games, and he wanted to make certain it was somebody like that.
What about decision making? Do you think decision making will change at all as you become?
One of the things that I learned as governor is, think about the state. We do everything from mental health issues to run prisons to educate 4-year-olds and PhD students and help people with foster care, et cetera. You learn, you can't run every part of the state yourself, and I feel strongly that way, that ownership's job is to say, here's where we want to go and here's how we're going to measure ourselves. But the draft's July 7th. I'm not going to be telling David Poyle, even 3 years from now, here's who I think you should pick.
I guess I'm sorry. I guess in terms of the ownership group and the way it's been done, it's kind of been a collective. Do you anticipate that continuing, or you being a little bit more of a stronger voice?
Well, we'll have to see how that plays out. I mean, I think you gotta tip your hat to this ownership group. I mean, they came into a really hard situation in 2007, and here we are in 2022, a really strong franchise. So, I think we'll continue to meet as a group and decide the things they have in the past. Whether I play a different role than historically has been played, we'll see.
Specifically, your message to Preds fans, what do you want them to know?
I want them to know that I care deeply about this team and its succeeding. That it's to me, it's I'm just like them. I wake up in the morning and I read sports or watch it on the news, and I understand that winning matters. And hardly any organization is always going to be at the top. I mean, it's just that's not how sports work. It's designed for equity. But I want to make certain that we're competing and winning, just like the person that shows up at wearing Roman's jersey and comes to 34 games a year.
Is there maybe like a big picture goal or two on the ice, off the ice, whether it's this year or down the line?
Yeah, I think one of the things is to make certain that the Preds stay at the very heart of the community. I mean, it really is admirable the way what's happened here. Because that's number one. Number two, we want to compete for the Stanley Cup. Now, I realize, it doesn't work that way. The Lightning and Avalanche are really good right now, but they had some pretty weak years in the past to get to be where they are now. And you realize that's part of the ebb and flow of sports teams. But I want to make certain we're competitive, and that we have an organization that's focused on winning at every level, and that's maximizing the opportunity of the Preds and the brand, and what that means. And it's also, this is a pretty special block that Bridgestone Arena sits in, and maximizing the development potential of it as well.
How much of your brother's involvement with the Browns and maybe watching from afar over the last several years either piqued your interest further in this or solidified it? Or?
I think sports is a really interesting business. Let me just say that. I mean, you can go make investments in a lot of things. Sports just happens to be a little bit more fun than most things, and I think most people who are sports fans would agree with that. So I don't know that that's changed my opinion a lot, except that it has shown me, sports is a business. First of all, it's tough, right? I mean, you gotta winning is not easy no matter what you do, and there's a lot of hard decisions around sports, just like any other business. But at the end of the day, it's about putting a product on the ice that is going to, like, I always picture that family of four, and they deciding, is going to the Preds game on Thursday night the best choice for how we're going to spend our night, and that's what I want to make certain we do.
Governor, how did it feel that once you put that and you thought, hey, I'm gonna be a professional? How did that feel?
Well, those folks who watch my 10 and 11-year-old career as a Pee Wee hockey player would be really surprised. But it's first of all, like I said, everything's not finalized yet, but for me, it's more about, like, this is just a really cool part of Nashville, and I want to make certain it stays that way.
Why the phased purchase? What's the reason for
Yeah,
that?
2 or 3 reasons. I think Herb really wanted to find, and I'll let him speak for himself, but he wanted to find an owner that kind of met the right criteria, but he wasn't really ready to exit stage left yet. I mean, he wanted to stay involved. And for me, that's a pretty good thing, right? I mean, I'm new to this, and having somebody that's been around and been part of the ownership group, since the beginning in 2007, feels really helpful to me.
What do you think are some of the things you're going to have to learn during this gradual process?
Again, sports, you think about it, there's a salary cap, and understanding how the salary cap works and what your alternatives are there, understanding, the investments that the team needs to make, not just in players, but in facilities and in training facilities, et cetera. Understanding all that, I think is really important. And the team's also, one of the critical players in the NHL. I think how an organization interacts with the league is really, really important. And my experience has been that the more actively engaged you are with the league, the better it is for the franchise.
The public aspect of it, do you anticipate trying to be, I guess, sort of somewhat regularly communicating with the public once you get into
I think so. I
door?
mean, again, maybe it's one of the advantages of having been in a public role before. All that doesn't feel foreign to me. And I think listen, the Preds' face should always be the players. I mean, at the end of the day, the fact, in my opinion, that Roman should have won an award that he didn't get should make all of us upset. And I want him to be the face of the franchise. But ownership should be the people who are kind of here over a long period of time, and the fans understand that they're invested not just financially but personally in caring how it works out.
Have you heard from any fans in support?
But my friends are just like everybody else. Like the folks that read or listen to you, like immediately they started sending me opinions about who we should sign, and so I'm like, well, you're getting the car way, way, way ahead of the horse. But so yeah, I mean, again, my friends, when this leaked out on, I guess, a week ago Thursday night, I got lots of texts from folks in your business, like trying to figure out what's happening. But I got way more from my friends saying, here's my opinion on what you should do with the Preds.
You said Pee Wee hockey?
A couple of years, a very undistinguished hockey career.
So from day one, you followed the team closely?
I'm a sports fan, and I like it. So came to decent amount of games while I was in office. We've come since. I just love sports. I'm the guy that told somebody I'm the guy that reads your column. I just don't happen to comment on it.
When you were in politics, even compared to now, I feel like it's ratcheted up.
It has. Fair.
The emotion or polarization. How do you, as a former politician, kind of separate that for the whole community of people that either agree with you or didn't agree with you when you were governor?
Yeah. So it actually it's a great point. It's a motivator for me. I mean, to say that we're more polarized even than when I left office 3.5 years ago is an understatement. We just are as a country, and sports has a chance to be one of those things that unifies us. I mean, there's a limited number of things that can bring people together, and sports has a chance to do that. And my point would be, at the Preds, we want to be about performance on the ice, and in the office and all the other stuff is extraneous to what we're trying to do.
Might this just be a tip of the toe? Might you be interested in future opportunities in sports world?
I think sports is both an interesting and a good investment long term, and I'm really bullish on Nashville.